Hi, this is Joe Walensky, and I'm visiting with some of the presenters who will be at our WritersUA West event, UA Boot Camp coming up in Seattle in April. Today I am meeting with Melissa Clarkson. Hello, Melissa.
Hi, Joe.
Where are you speaking to us from today?
I am at the University of Washington. I'm in the basement of the Health Sciences Center.
All right. Well, so we're close together today. I'm talking from my office in Seattle. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, types of things that you're involved in?
All right. Well, I started out in biology. I was working doing cell biology, and I realized that one of the issues in science is that students are taught to collect information, not necessarily communicate that data. And so I thought that was a very interesting problem. And I transitioned from biology to design school. I have a master's in communication planning and information design from Carnegie Mellon. And that's where I was able to put together my interests of scientific and technical communication with learning of how to really effectively communicate technical and scientific information. And then I made another transition into biomedical and health informatics. So I have just finished a PhD in biomedical and health informatics here at the University of Washington. And I'm, well, what I'm currently doing is getting together some projects and finishing up my portfolio and some projects. But while I was here, I was able to put together my interests in figuring out how people who are in science who haven't had any formal training in communication or design, but yet they need to communicate this information. And so I developed a workshop while I was a grad student. And so I was able to kind of put into practice trying out my ideas of how do I take people, particularly grad students in science and engineering, and teach them basic design and communication principles. And so
And one of the I should have mentioned the topic you're going to be talking about at the event is fundamentals of visual communication, and
yes.
that's an area that is definitely of interest to our user assistance constituency, and so I know your workshop uh, gets specifically into the details of what it means to communicate visually.
Yes, so the material I'm going to present during your conference is taken from the first session of my workshop, and that really grounds people in the absolute fundamentals of visual communication. It's looking at visual variables of position, color, size, shape, orientation. It's looking at composition using contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And then how do you put those together and communicate four really important things to people, which are, or excuse me, three: grouping, hierarchy, and sequence. Because in working with scientists, I'm realizing those are the three big things they need to visually communicate: grouping, hierarchy, and sequence. So by giving them the basic tools in these visual variables and looking at compositions with how to achieve hierarchy, grouping, and sequence, that solves probably 3/4 of their visual communication challenges. So
Well, so you mentioned some of the things from, that are part of your work in that workshop. I think for user assistance professionals in general, I would say that almost all of us have visual elements in our work, whether that's with icons, screenshots of the UI, uh, diagrams, flowcharts, um, and then just other miscellaneous elements, possibly photos in our materials. And I know I use those all the time. But sometimes I wonder whether we know as much about what it takes for those visuals to be truly effective as communication elements as much as we do on the wordsmithing
yeah.
side. I think we're fairly comfortable in understanding what it takes with words, phrases, sentences, passages to be able to get across a point, but maybe less so with the science related to visuals. I don't know if you kind of found that in, in working with your own students.
Yeah, in working with the people I've worked with, it's they need to visually communicate, and so what they do is they look at other people's posters, other people's figures, other people's slides, and they say, well, this must be the way it's done, therefore I'll copy that. And sometimes that works, but sometimes if they're looking at examples that are not as effective as they could be, then it just kind of propagates practices that inhibit communication instead of promoting communication. So what I hope to do during your conference is to run through some exercises that will give people some very basic ideas to ask themselves when they're doing visual communication. Do I need to create groups? How can I create groups given my constraints? Do I need to show hierarchy? How can I do that? Like if you're confined to just doing something in black and white, that limits you, but you still have options in what you can do.
There's a number of areas you were going to talk about. Is there anyone that you might want to just give a preview of right now?
Sure. Um, I can go over one common mistake that people make when they're designing a composition, whether it be let's say in the example of a diagram or a flow chart, some type where you have individual elements that have relationships. We all use software, and software has a huge color palette, and it's exciting to go and pick all these different colors, but you have to stop and think, what am I communicating with that color? Because if you have 12 different colors and you have that you're applying to this, someone trying to understand this might say there must be a meaning to this. Why is this one orange? Why is this one red? Why is this one green? And if the viewer might be trying to think you're communicating something that the color has meaning. Whereas if you had no meaning to the color, you just put the color because you had a lot of color options, then you've inhibited communication instead of promoting communication. So for example, if you have one type of thing, like let's say you have cats and you have dogs icons, and if you make all the dog icons orange and all the cat icons blue, then I can see that the color has meaning there. Whereas if you just randomly assign colors to these, all that color would be inhibiting communication. So choose color carefully, and if your color has meaning, make sure the meaning of the color is clear. So.
All right. Well, yeah, that's really interesting. Definitely makes me think about some of the ways I've been doing that myself. Well, great. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this little preview of your talk and give us a little bit of info about your own background. And I'll look forward to seeing you in Seattle in April.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks a lot, Melissa. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.